She looked straight into my eyes that day and said, "No one would ever want you." Her words were cold, sharp, and they cut deeper than I ever admitted to anyone. I remember standing there, feeling my chest tighten as if her rejection was a punishment for simply existing. I didn't argue. I didn't beg her to stay. I just quietly turned around and walked away with tears threatening to fall. But I held them back because even then, I knew that one day, life would answer her for me. Years passed, and I worked harder than anyone around me could imagine. I woke up before the sun rose and went to sleep when the world was quiet. I built myself piece by piece, fighting every painful memory of her words echoing in my mind. Her voice kept telling me I wasn't enough, but instead of destroying me, it fueled every dream I had buried inside. I promised myself I would become someone I could be proud of, even if no one else ever saw it. Then one day, the world saw it. I stood on a massive stage, my hands shaking, heart racing, as the cameras broadcasted everything live on national TV. I was holding a ring, about to propose to the woman of my dreams, a woman millions admired, a famous actress whose smile melted hearts everywhere. But as I looked out into the bright lights and cheering crowd, my eyes caught a familiar face sitting quietly at the back, tears streaming down her cheeks. It was her. At that moment, I realized something I never expected. But before I tell you what happened next, let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other's business. My family didn't have much, and I was always that quiet kid sitting alone at lunch, scribbling dreams in my old, torn notebook. I never spoke about them to anyone because I knew they would laugh. And she did. Her name was Mia. Back then, she was the prettiest girl in our school, with a voice that could silence a room. Everyone wanted her attention, but somehow, she ended up talking to me. At first, I thought maybe she liked me. She would smile and ask about my drawings, and for a few weeks, I believed someone finally saw me. But one afternoon, when I gathered all my courage to tell her how I felt, she laughed. Not the sweet laugh she shared with her friends, but a cruel, sharp laugh that made my chest ache. That's when she said those words, "No one would ever want you." I remember my knees feeling weak, but I forced myself to stand tall. Her friends stood behind her, covering their mouths to hide their giggles. That was the day something changed inside me forever. After graduation, I left town without saying goodbye. I didn't want anyone to see how broken I felt. I moved to the city and worked small jobs, delivering food and cleaning offices at night. But every spare moment, I poured into learning skills I hoped would take me far away from who I used to be. Acting was my secret escape. I practiced lines alone in my tiny room, imagining a crowd clapping for me. Every time I felt like giving up, her words echoed in my mind, pushing me forward with silent rage. Little did I know, fate was already writing a scene I could never have imagined in those early days in the city. Loneliness was my only friend. I would sit on a broken plastic chair by the window, looking at the bright lights far away, wondering if I would ever belong there. Sometimes, after long shifts, I would pass by huge billboards of actors and actresses smiling down at the world, and I'd whisper to myself, "One day, that will be me." But deep down, there was fear. Fear that Mia was right. Fear that no one would ever want me, no matter how hard I tried. Then I met Ray, an old janitor in one of the buildings I cleaned at night. He caught me practicing my lines in the empty lobby one time. I was so embarrassed I couldn't look him in the eye, but he just chuckled and said, "Keep going, kid. You've got fire in your voice." He started bringing me old acting books he found at thrift shops. Sometimes he would sit and listen as I practiced scenes late into the night. Ray had dreams once too, but life never gave him the chance to chase them. So he made sure I didn't lose mine. Meanwhile, Mia's life was taking a different turn. Back in our town, she stayed after graduation. Everyone thought she'd become a model or move to the city, but she got engaged early to a wealthy man. At first, her pictures with him were everywhere, at fancy restaurants, driving expensive cars. But soon, whispers began to spread. He was never home, always traveling with business partners. The glow on her face slowly faded, but she kept smiling for the world. She had no idea that far away, the boy she once destroyed was building something that would one day leave her speechless. Years went by like blurred pages in a fast-moving book. I started landing small roles in commercials, then minor parts in TV shows. Each time, I stood in front of the camera remembering Mia's words. They didn't hurt anymore, they lit a fire under my feet. Slowly, people began recognizing my face. I would get stopped on streets for selfies. My followers grew, directors noticed me, and soon I was being called for lead roles. But even with all the fame that started surrounding my life, I never forgot where I came from or who helped me when I had nothing. Ray passed away before he could see me on the big screen. On the day of his funeral, I promised him silently that I would make his kindness mean something. A year later, I was invited to star in a movie alongside Eliza Hart, the famous actress everyone adored. She was beautiful, talented, and grounded despite her fame. During shooting, we became close friends. She liked my simplicity, and I admired her strength. But what no one knew was that I was falling for her, slowly and deeply. Then came the biggest day of my life, the day I decided to propose to her. It was during a national live interview about our film. The producers knew about my plan and arranged everything perfectly. My heart pounded like a drum as I stood backstage with the ring in my pocket, waiting for my cue. I could hear the crowd's loud cheer and her soft laugh echoing through the stage speakers. But as I stepped forward under the bright lights, my eyes scanned the audience, and that's when I saw her, Mia, sitting there, frozen, her eyes wide with disbelief. The same girl who once told me no one would ever want me, was now about to watch the world prove her wrong. My knees almost gave out when I saw Mia's face in the crowd. For a second, everything around me faded, the bright lights, the cheering audience, even Eliza sitting gracefully on stage. All I saw was the girl from my past staring at me with tears streaming down her cheeks. Part of me felt anger rise in my chest. Another part felt pity. But there was no time to think because the host was already handing me the mic, smiling wide, expecting me to continue with my plan. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling as I clutched the ring box in my pocket. I looked at Eliza, her eyes sparkling with curiosity, completely unaware of what was happening inside me. But before I could step forward and speak, the host's earpiece crackled, and suddenly he raised his hand to stop everything. The entire hall fell silent. My heart dropped. "Sorry everyone, we're getting breaking news," he said, turning toward the camera. The huge screens behind us lit up with a live news report. I felt my blood run cold when I saw what it was about. The headline flashed in red letters: "Famous actress Eliza Hart's secret engagement exposed." On the screen were paparazzi photos of Eliza holding hands with another man in Paris just a week ago. My mind went blank. I looked at her in shock. Her smile faltered, her face turned pale. The audience started murmuring, confused and restless. The host awkwardly tried to continue, but the damage was done. Eliza reached out to touch my arm, whispering, "I can explain." But before I could respond, my eyes flicked back to Mia. She wasn't crying anymore. She was smiling, the same cruel smile I remembered from high school. And at that moment, I realized nothing was going to go the way I had planned. Everything felt unreal in that moment. The lights seemed too bright, the crowd too loud, and Eliza's whispers felt like they were coming from far away. My chest tightened as I watched her lips move, trying to explain something about the man in Paris being just an old friend. But I couldn't hear her. All I could hear was the pounding of my heart, and the faint echo of Mia's laughter in the back row. I turned to look at Mia again. She raised her eyebrows, almost as if mocking me silently, reminding me of the day she broke me with her words. But instead of feeling pain or anger, I felt calm. I realized something in that instant. My life was never about proving her wrong or making her regret what she did. It was about becoming the man I always wanted to be, no matter who stood with me or against me. Taking a deep breath, I turned back to Eliza. I held her hands gently and said into the mic, "Eliza, I care about you deeply, but I think we need to talk in private before anything else." The audience gasped softly, and Eliza nodded with tears in her eyes. I stepped back, my heart aching, but I felt proud for choosing respect over spectacle. As the host quickly ended the show, I walked off the stage and headed straight out of the building into the quiet night. But before I reached my car, someone called my name. I turned around and saw Mia standing there, shivering in the cold, eyes swollen from crying. "I was wrong about you," she whispered, her voice breaking. I looked at her for a long moment, then smiled softly and said, "You're right. You were." And as I turned to leave, I saw a casting agent waiting by my car with an offer that would change my life forever. I stood there for a moment, looking at Mia as the cold breeze brushed against my face. Her eyes were full of regret, but I didn't feel any satisfaction seeing her like that. I simply felt free. All those years, I thought I wanted revenge or to prove her wrong, but in reality, I just needed to let go of her words that chained my heart for so long. The casting agent approached me with a warm smile. "I saw what happened back there," she said softly. "You handled it with such grace. We're looking for someone like you, strong, real, and grounded. I have a lead role in an upcoming international film that I think you'd be perfect for." My hands trembled as I accepted her card. We spoke briefly, and after she left, I sat in my car, staring at the city lights through the windshield. My phone buzzed with messages from friends and producers, some offering support, some wanting statements about what happened with Eliza. I ignored them all for now. I needed silence to let everything sink in. Eliza later reached out and explained everything clearly. The man in Paris was an old college friend who was going through a divorce, and she was supporting him. Paparazzi twisted the story to create headlines. We met privately and spoke for hours. Though I cared deeply for her, I realized I still had a lot of healing to do within myself before loving anyone else fully. We remained good friends, promising each other to stay honest and supportive no matter where our lives took us. A few months later, I was standing in front of cameras again, but this time in Hollywood, filming my first international movie. As I walked onto set dressed in costume, ready to deliver my lines, I felt the weight of my journey behind me. The lonely boy with torn notebooks had finally become the man he always dreamt of being. Sometimes at night, when I lay in my hotel room looking at the city below, I think about Mia. I hope she finds her peace too. Because life isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were always worthy, even when no one saw it. That is the real success, loving yourself enough to rise above every doubt ever thrown at you.